Good morning, Sharon.
Good morning, Rebecca.
I'm going to have a planning conversation with Sharon Olenichik, and it's February the 23rd, and the lesson is shoe graph.
Yes.
Thinking about the lesson that you will be conducting tomorrow, what are some things that you've been thinking about in terms of what you will do to make the big idea come out for the children?
Well, first I'll be starting with a story about shoes, so that'll get them thinking about the different types of shoes. After that, we'll talk about the shoes the children are wearing and what types of shoes they have on their feet. And I'll ask them to take a shoe off, and we'll have a pile of shoes. And
so can we stop there a second? You said that you're going to have the kids, after they listen to the book, they're going to be looking. How are you going? Have you thought about how you're going to suggest the idea of them taking off their shoe, or?
I think I'm just going to say, why don't we each take off one of our shoes and put it in the center and see how we can sort our shoes.
Okay.
And then they'll have a big pile of shoes.
I'm wondering if you can think about a question before giving them the idea of sorting. Because I think that going back to the big idea that the main purpose of collecting data is to answer questions when the answers are not immediately obvious. In other words, in the way that I heard you say, let's take off our shoes and sort them to find out. It strikes me that you could think about a question prior to that.
Before they take off their shoes.
Before they take off their shoes.
I could have them look at their shoes. What type of shoes are you wearing? And they'll be looking at their own shoe, and they'll be looking at the other children's shoes, and that will get them talking about the types of shoes before they take them off.
I'm thinking more along the lines of even before we get into looking at so basically just asking if we wanted to find out what kinds of shoes we're wearing today. Are we all wearing the same kind? How do we know? So in a way, thinking about before
even categorizing them?
Before even categorizing them, to go back to answer questions when the questions are not immediately obvious. So if we wanted to find out what kinds of shoes we were wearing today, what could we do?
What could we do? Oh, just a big general question. Right.
So even before that.
Right.
Do you think that would be, that the kids would be interested, like?
Oh, yeah, they would love it. Yeah, that's a good idea to open it up that way. I'm writing it down so I don't forget. So if we had to find out what shoes we were wearing today, how could we find out what shoes we were wearing today? You said it so well.
I think that how could we find out what kinds of shoes we were wearing today? If we wanted to know, how could we find out?
Yeah.
So I think that sometimes we tend to think about this kind of idea of doing a graph more as following instructions. So if we really are trying to get them to engage in this big idea, the main purpose of collecting data is to answer a question, we need to start with a good question.
Good question, yeah.